talk about, how do you generate, do a feasibility study for your project, because I've been asked by one individual to how to do a lot of this information. I think what the major issue in the office is that everybody always uses SketchUp, and then what happened with SketchUp is that they have this topography built into a SketchUp model, and they just grab it and it's put it as, and then generate their site. The issue isn't so much about the site itself, it's just the information that they got may not be as accurate as it can be. So typically what I typically tell the users that you kind of have to have a source of information so that you or whoever can say, okay, this is gathered from this source or that source. One of the major issue we had in the past is that people gathered from some unknown information from VanMap, some sort of PDF, and they trace it over. And what that happens is that a lot of their property lines are not accurate. We got into trouble with that, and then we are paying for that because of the lack of users' knowledge to actually understand what that does. So what is open data? Now, with open data, depending on which jurisdiction you're in, I'm just going to use Vancouver as a perfect example. Okay, so what you have to do is just type in open data, and what happens is that the City of Vancouver will have a catalog. So if you click on the data catalog, this thing constantly updates, I think every few months. Okay, you notice that there is a contour package. Okay, now they will use the shapefile. The only thing you want to look for is the DWG file. The shapefile, the one thing that you have to do is that if you're downloading the shapefile, you have to use Civil 3D to convert them. So this is why some of this information are really useful for, let's say, people doing urban design. They should be the people that helped you gather all this information, does a lot of the stuff, and then generating all of this information. There's a lot of information, a lot of data that user wants to use. You see that if you want a photographic imagery, there's ECW or Mr. Sid. Okay, those are huge files. I don't recommend everybody downloading it, but just have one person download it and then just put it on a server somewhere so that everybody else can access it. Now, a lot of these files can only be opened using Civil 3D. If you have other software like ArcGIS, that can also open this file. KML file, it's going to be using the Google services to generate their data. Now, Vancouver is not the only one. There's other Surrey as well and North Van. The only thing data that you may not get is the City of Burnaby. US, I'm not sure. You kind of have to just say open data and see what they get. Okay, recently we had a couple of users asking for the City of Surrey. Okay, City of Surrey has a lot of data you can get. You can go into the open data. They'll just look up that information. Like you can go to satellite images. Now, this sort of a thing is as you get more and more updated with the city will provide you with all this information. So it is not feasible to just use Google Maps because Google Maps are not accurate. Okay, they might be updating every couple of months or a couple of years, and you don't know if their data is accurate. So I would just say if you have to have something, always check with the city that you're in and see if there's a data that allows you to download a lot of this information. Okay, since I already downloaded a set, I'm just going to go through kind of the process of how to translate a lot of this data into more of something that you can use. Now, if you are doing the City of Vancouver, the first thing you will have to do is that you kind of have to open up, open up the AutoCAD first. So since they're going to be DWG, which is what we're using, so what I want user to do is that you just have to know where to look for it. So let me load up the AutoCAD side and see if anybody has any question. Okay. All right. So the first thing you want to do is that if you're doing any open data, it is good to use a unit. Okay, what I typically do is that I like to use metric, since we're metric, and Revit will read metric perfectly. If you use other units, let's say feet, Revit will translate it very strangely. So a lot of time I told the user, since we're a metric country, use the metric, makes your life easier. So first thing you do is just open. And the next thing you want to do is that you want to set your units up so that they're always in meters. Okay. So the next thing I would do is that I'm just going to go UN, and change this to meters. Okay. And this is much it. The next thing you want to do is that if you have the IBI framework already installed, what you want to do is that you want to go into the urban design. Just go imperial or metric, doesn't matter. The first thing you're going to have is that you're going to have a data set called the open data. As well, there's a lot of other open data from other jurisdiction. All right, I'm just putting it in as an example if you want to grab stuff, but this is something that we have right here. So in here, we have open data for the City of Vancouver. The first thing you want to check is that there's a lot of open data in here. Okay, they're huge. So you don't have to open up each and every one. The only thing you have to open up is the 0-COV combine. Okay, just double click. Okay, it's going to take you a few minutes because it has a lot of XREF. Okay, so right now what you have is that you have like a city of Vancouver with point datas and let's say that is your property line. So let's assume that you want to do some sort of a location within your. Let's say I'm going to delete that first. Let's say we're going to do it close to close to this BC place. So let's assume that okay, there's a site here being demolished, and what you want is that if you're doing open data, if you want to build like a context map and stuff like that, what we do is that I try to do it like as a region so that you know exactly where it is. Okay, let's say assuming that that is the site that you want to do, draw a circle. What we do is that I would typically recommend user turning on the menu bar so that you have access to this copy with base point. Okay, copy base point and put 0, 0. The next thing you want to do is that you want to open up the site first. So what you do is that you go open up. Okay. And what you're going to do is like you're going to go paste coordinates. So you know exactly where it is, because since the data is huge, you do not want to import every single thing. So you want to kind of like map it out where exact location you want to put in. So what I typically do is that I'm just going to map out this location. Just select where you want it. And then you're going to go copy base point again and put 0, 0. And then you go back to your drawing one, which is what you created, and edit and paste. Okay. And when you zoom out, this is the data that you're copying in. The next thing you want to do is that when you go edit, copy base point, 0, 0 again. So you're just basically taking in that same circle. You're going to close this cohesion boundary because you no longer needed that. The next thing you want to do is that just select the dots and say open, open that file. Now, City of Vancouver is it's one of those jurisdiction that is very weird because it provided this dot points, which is about every 10 meters. Oops. If I measure from this location to that location, it gives me about like 12 meter kind of like spreading apart in distance, which is okay. This is what we want. Some other jurisdictions only use contour. Right. So how you do contour is that you do it exactly the same. You just basically put this in. And what you want is that you want to select that and say edit, copy base point, and go 0, 0. Okay. Next thing you want to do is that you want to go back to the same drawings and edit, paste coordinates. And this is what you have. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of that. So since you have this data already put in, I'm just going to go save as. Okay. And I'm just going to put it into my desktop call recover and say this is going to be COV Open Data. Okay, what you want to do is that you want to keep this as the original, okay, and you want to save as another version which has its use for the Revit side of things. The reason why you want to do that is because this COV data, if you need like some other data from other points, then you can use the same City of Vancouver data and copy that information and just paste it into this. And then what you do is that you take that and move it into the cluster where Revit can read it. So the next thing you want to do is that you want to pick a let's say this is the site, and you want to pick, like, let's say this point to be my 0, 0. So what you're going to do is that just say move all, okay, and then make that my 0, 0, and then go 0, 0. Okay, and what you want to do is that you want to do a save as, okay, and then this is one. It's going to be Revit. I'm just going to call Revit. You can rotate this. For now, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, just want to keep it simple. But a lot of time, what I do is that once you have this as a Revit, I would just say rotate it just to see, make sure that the point itself is flush to one of this angle. But for now, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, the next thing you want to do is that once you move that is your 0, 0, you want to translate all these points into some sort of a data point so that Revit can read that. The first thing you want to do is that you go into the IBI group tools, miscellaneous utility, and it's called the point extraction manager. If you're using the ribbon side of things, okay, it should be under this guy, point extraction manager. Okay, so let's say I'm going to click on that. The first thing you want to do is that you want to input is the points. Output, you want it to be a file. Okay, when you go browse, make sure that you choose the CSV file. Okay, that's very important. And when you click on save and hit OK, what it does is that it taken all the points and then it basically written to a file. Okay, so this is done. So Revit side of things, I'm just going to save it. Now within the Revit, I'm just going to finish what I'm doing here. And let's see, I'm going to choose a new project. I'm just going to leave it. You could choose either Imperial metric, doesn't matter. Okay, I'm just going to start with Imperial just for simplicity. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go to site plan. The first thing I'm going to do is that just as a demonstration purposes, I'm just going to put it in cat link, current view. I'm just going to go to my desktop and click on recover and say that is my thing. Do not correct. Just say visible. Preserve color, that's fine. Just say OK. There we go. Now, you notice that sometimes Revit will translate the point, sometimes it will not translate the point. So it really depends. Can you use this as kind of like your data point? You can. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it will fail. So a lot of time I don't encourage it. The reason why I don't encourage it is because sometimes the point can be disappearing. I'm noticing in more and more projects is that points never show up when you need it, and when you didn't need it, it does show up. So it's kind of like 50-50. So now once you import this in, the next thing you want to do is that you go to site, you go to topo surface. Now what you're going to do is that you're going to go specify points. Okay, click on that. You notice that there is a CSV file that they're looking for, and choose one with the Revit data, open CSV. And when you hit open, choose the meters. Okay, when you hit OK, and you notice that Revit automatically choose those information. When you hit submit and make this thing go to the foreground, and there we go. All right. The next thing you want to do is that you want to create property line. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose that. Okay. The boundary is never going to be accurate. That's fine. And then say OK. What you can do now is that you can say, okay, well, first I'm going to turn off the filter. Okay, just say none. Go filter and check it off. And now you have a property line with your topo on it. So for topography, I would just turn off this primary and secondary contour. Okay, so that what you're getting is just blank piece of slate like that. Now, if you want to control the contour, let's say contour is really dense, okay? I know that some people still have not figured out how to do it. You can click on the model site, okay? This is where you're going to say, okay, how much interval you want, okay? And if you want increment, let's say I want 5 feet, and hit apply. And what it does is that it does that. Okay, it tells you where to stop. Let's say starting, and then where's the ending point. So let's say 3,000 feet. But if you want more, then you can say I want 10 feet, and hit apply, and it should change. If you want 15, let's go 15, and let's say this is going to be 30. Okay, just a couple of things you can change inside your intervals, right? But for now, I'm just going to say I'm going to turn it off so that it's not distracting. Okay, now once you have this, the next thing you want to do is that you want to create like some sort of a site within your feasibility study. So the first thing you would do is that you will want to select your, let's say, position right now. Let's say you want to rotate true north or rotate, yeah, that's what you want. Okay, right now it's project north, and then this is the true north. But the thing is that I want to rotate it back to the project north. So what you do is that rotate project north, set align to plane. The first thing you want to do is that I want to use one of the lines. Let's pick that one. Okay, and what happened is that when you change to true north, it's going to be back to the original. And when it's like that, that's going to be your project north. Okay, just be careful, because if you pick one side, which means that this side is going to be the actual 0, but you kind of have to double check. So I always say be careful, okay? I always like to do it inside AutoCAD, just rotate it to the 90 degree because they're more accurate. This one, it looks like, there's a jagged line. So sometimes you cannot control that, but I'll leave it up to you guys how you want to rotate it, okay? Here, I'm just going to do just a simple demonstration, and that's pretty much it. Okay, once you have everything established, the first thing I want to do is that I want to cut a section so that I know exactly where my building is going to be. Okay, so let's say I'm going to cut out a huge section. Okay, just go here, and then you want to pull it out. Okay, and I'm just going to say, okay, that's my range, and you notice that there's a lot of sites. So what you want to do is that whenever I establish any of my Revit project, I always like to put this level 1 and then say yes, level 2. Now, the reason why the template itself is a little bit messy is that whenever user rename the stuff, right, it will rename your elevation right here. So this is why I tell the user, you always create a source view. It's the same reason that somebody should not be messing up with your elevation level. So it should always read level 1, level 2, or et cetera, et cetera. But this one apparently didn't do that, so that's fine. Here, I'm just going to call this elevation 0. Now, the reason why I always put an elevation 0 is because in this kind of a case, elevation 0 is always going to be the absolute 0, where all your models, depending if you're using SketchUp, Rhino, AutoCAD, or any other software, they would always treat the 000 as the absolute. So in Revit, there is an absolute, but the thing is that you can move this up and down. But when you start exporting it out, the absolute 0 never change. So it's in there, right? I know that Revit, they say, you can use shared coordinates and all that stuff, but you know what? Trying to keep it simple, I would just say put it in elevation 0. I'm just going to move this up. Let's say this is going to go up, let's say 20 feet. And this one, I like to put it at 0. Okay, so this is going to be the absolute 0. Now, if someone screwed up with your camera, when you copy it, I always say paste it to elevation 0 so that the camera itself, if you copy from one Revit project to another, if you have that elevation 0, it will basically place it in the correct location. Okay, if you place it into level 1, level 2, what it does is that it always offsets. So I typically don't do that. So that's the trick. If you have like a camera that was screwed up, or someone delete the camera and you want to recover it, elevation 0 is going to help you with that. Okay, just a trick. Okay, so let's say I'm going to move this up to 40 feet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to array. Okay, I'm just going to say array this. Let's say first and second. Let's say I'm going to ungroup it because I should say this is level 3. Let's say I'm going to array it more. Okay, and then let's say I'm going to say 12 story. Let's make it 30. Come on. Okay, so let's say I'm going to say 25 story. That's fine. The next thing you want to do is that you can ungroup it or you leave it alone. I'll leave it up to you. But most of the time, if you are set with your level, I always ungroup them. All right, because you do not want all this thing to be grouped because it's just more complication. But for now, I'm just going to leave it grouped. So the next thing you want to do is that you want to start building your buildings. Okay, so here, what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go Project North. That's fine. I'm just going to use my site and turn this on. Sorry. Okay, so next thing you want to do, okay, my site is there, but level 1, this is not showing up. So again, my floor plan, I'm going to turn that off. And site property line. Okay, that's good. Yeah, don't worry about this. This is all junk. Okay, so now the next thing you want to do is that you want to create massing. So we click on this and say show massing and create a massing in place. Here I'm just going to go tower 1. Okay, I'm just going to do a simple box. Just say sure. Let's see, I'm going to do that. Finished. Okay, that's fine. And then here, edit in place. You want to create a form. Okay. And now what you're going to do here is that you're going to select it and you're going to move it up, let's say 450 feet. Okay. Now, if you want to add some sort of architectural feature where you want to like make one building kind of like, sway in the other side and the other one sway in the other side, just as a simplicity, right? Let's say you want to do that. Okay, you can finish that. And then what you can do now is that you can, when you select that, you can go edit and say, I want level 1 up till level 27. And what it does is that it's basically going to cut those levels into those floor. Now, if you want to continue on, let's say I'm going to go my section. Okay, so let's say make it 40. Right now our building, you could fit probably 50. We'll see. 50 is too much. So let's say 46. Yeah, let's go 46 the last level. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the next thing you do is that once you add that floor, you go in. Again, I'm just going to basically just put it in. Okay. So here, what I'm doing is that I'm just creating a mass, creating a floor. Just a massing floor. Next thing you want to do is that within that, you can always, put in a floor. Okay. And what you could do is that you could select all the floor and say create floor. Okay. There we go. That's what it is. And for this, I think I should change it to show complete. Now, sometimes you see that it doesn't look correct. I always like to make it show complete so that it looks perfect. Delete this. You don't need that. Okay. So there's your tower. And then now what you want is that you want to place in, let's say, a curtain system. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to put that in, create a curtain system. And do that, curtain system. And do the same thing here, create curtain system. And finally, the opposite side, the same thing. So now, if you want to change the spacing of the curtain system, right? Let's say this is too much. Then what you can do is that you can go in here and say, okay, what distance do you want, grid 1 and grid 2. So here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say 12 feet by, let's say, 4 feet. So you know that you want it the other way, so this has to be 4 feet, and then this is going to be 12 feet. But let's assume that right now it's 10 feet. Sorry, I'm just going to make it 10 feet. Okay, just to simplify stuff. Now, there's always a difference. Okay, so there's a fixed distance, there's a maximum spacing, minimum spacing. Fixed distance, what happened is that at the end of the day, it's going to show this little gap right here. So if you want to say, you know, same spacing within this this current panel, I always put in maximum spacing. This one, you want to keep it, let's say, if this is 10 feet, just make it all 10 feet. Okay. Now, I forgot to put in is that if you want to put like starting to put like mullion grids and all that stuff, you can do that. Okay. But as a demonstration purpose, this is good enough for what it does. There we go. Okay. Now, the nicest thing about Revit is that you can actually calculate based on what you have. So what you can do is that if you want to add in a schedule, okay, you can go, okay, I want it to be massing. You can say mass floor schedule. Let's say okay. And what you want is that you want to say floor area, okay, and then level, okay. And when you hit okay, there we go. There it gives you a floor. And what you want to do with the floor is that you want to calculate total, field format. What I typically like to do is that I like to do digital grouping. You could do 2 decimal places or 1 decimal places. 0 is fine. Suppress trailing 0. And then say okay. Now the other thing I like to do is that I like to add in the calculated value, which is area, okay, and floor area metric. Okay, I like to say square meter. Okay, and what you're going to do with this, same way how you do it, is that you like to do calculate total, field format. Okay, instead of using that, say square meter. This one I like to put in 2 decimal places and say okay. Okay. And what you do here is that you can say grand total or itemize every item. That's fine. So total only. And what it does is that it allows you to calculate how much floors you have. Okay. So it allows you basically to calculate what you have within your floor. And the nicest thing about this is that I'm just gonna minimize all the stuff so that you can actually compare what you have. I'm gonna be busy, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize all that and just say WT. Now, the nice thing about Revit, as you keep changing stuff, let's say I'm going to go edit that, and you want to push this back a little bit, okay? What this does is that it allows you to basically change all that stuff. And if you want to update all your, let's see, I'm going to click on that. Oops. Relate to host, okay? And then update to face. And what it does is that every time when you change the mass, trying to study all this stuff, you can actually say, okay, for all the mass, please change all your kind of massing back to the way it was. And what it does is that allows you to kind of like, you know, look at what you have in here and then stuff like that. So any questions so far? I'm just trying to do a very quick demonstration. I know that sometimes people are not using this as kind of like, oh, caveats, you know, but I use it saying that this is feasibility study. It's very powerful if you know what you're doing, and you can generate this information pretty rapidly for a lot of this information. Now, the benefit of this is that you can actually generate shadow studies if you need to, okay? One thing I forgot to show people is that if you want to make your, let's say, a shadow study and you want to put it like overlay Google Map, it's going to be a little bit tricky, right? But it is doable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place in a map, okay? Right now I'm just going to say, I'm just going to add in a topo map, create new material. sorry, I'm just going to rename topo map. And within this topo map, what you can do is that you can add an image. I'm just going to add in like a really simple image. Okay. Let's see what's a good image. Let me double check and see if I have a Google Map images. I'm just going to use a fake images, but you know what? This is you could do this for anything. PPA. Let's see if it is. Let's say thumbnail. Okay, let's say assume that that is your topo map, and you want to put it into your sitemap. So what you could do is I just put it in there, edit the image. Okay. The one thing that you want to do is that you want to calculate how big is your square footage area. For most of the time, for the images, it's going to tile it, okay, one by one. So what I typically like to do is that put in like 200 feet, so that you know you're covering within those range. You can put it as a tile or say none, okay, and then say this is I'm going to put in 300 feet, and make it done. Okay, you're going to make it bump out. Again, you just choose the same image as well, and then if you wanted to be a little bit more of a, let's say, same, I will always put it the same. Okay, and just put none, and that's pretty much it. If you want to say amount, let's say the same. Let's say dot. Say okay. Okay, you're not going to see it until you hit realistic. Okay, and realistic sometimes could be. I'm just going to turn this off. Yeah, sometimes it does not show up. I don't know what. Any case, oh, it looks like okay. So I think it's because the map is too big. So again, that's how you customize your kind of a bump map. So you can actually put in an image into this. Sorry, I botched that up. Okay, let me double check what's in there. Okay. 300 feet, repeating. I'll just say, yeah, sure. Let's make it tile. And let's say make it 200 feet, inverted image. Sure. And same thing here, 200 feet, And yeah, sure, just tile it. There you go. All right. It is doable. Yeah, it looks pretty bad, but let me change it back to the appearances and make sure that this is not inverted image. It looks like a Darth Vader kind of a thing scenario, but you know the possibility is there, right? So as long as user are using some of this stuff and then use the Google Map, you can generate a lot of the crazy stuff out of it just using just simple Revit. Okay. So right now I'm just showing you the kind of like how we do massing and then shadow study. And if you want to build like the surrounding using this information, makes it very, very accurate. Okay. Any questions so far before I kind of looks like there's a question. Any question? Now, guys, inside Revit, the nicest thing about it is that you have families as well. So if you are using out of the box, let's say content library, if you want to put like planting, again, use RPC as well. So let's say I'm going to open that up and just load them in. Okay. Say project one. I mean, again, you can just put it in. I know that it's not the best, but you know, it is what it is. And when you go to 3D, Oh yeah, the trees. And you can still select the tree, select all instance, entire project, and say pick a host. So what you want is that you want to pick this as my host. And what that does is that that tree basically will host it on the site. Any question? No question. Pretty silent. Okay. I hope this is pretty important. It's you see, it's pretty powerful. So what you're doing right now is that you're just generating. Oh, first step. I'm just going to summarize what I did. Is that first you take the information from the city of Vancouver. Okay. I already download one from the urban design. Okay. City Open Data. And now I'm going to copy one for the city of Surrey because I know that in the future you guys are going to be doing some projects in Surrey. Okay, so this is how you're going to be grabbing information. Is that first you grab the city information because city is just pretty accurate. Last time I checked, it's about 90% accurate. Okay, so that's a good starting point to get all this data and get all this information. The road system, all that stuff, I always check with them because city always have to have the most current information. The next thing you do is that once you get all this information, okay, you create a drawing, starting out a drawing. Okay, make sure the units are always in meters. Okay, because a lot of the open data that you're working on, it's going to be in meters. Okay, so always remember that. Okay, you go in here, just change the units from meters to millimeters. Okay, next thing you do is that you're going to be figuring out where the location of your site is going to be. Let's assume that this is your site. All you have to do, just draw a circle. It's good to have as much information as possible rather than have just only this particular area, because when you do site studies or anything related to shadow studies, you want your map to be as big as possible so that your shadow can follow and see how that impacts the rest of the other building right here. If you show too little, what happens is that when you do shadow study, it would not fall on the topographic. It's going to be falling behind that. So you're relying on what is the level, okay? Because if you don't know, in shadow study, when I go to level 1, okay, in here, Revit has this shadow study, okay, cast a shadow, okay, lighting, and you notice that sometimes it says that ground plane. What is my ground plane? I always turn them off, right? If you have a topo, this should always be turned off. But if you don't have a topo, sometimes you're relying on level 1 as kind of like your where the shadow is going to stop. Unfortunately, if you have site that has like a big dip, which is like this is the perfect site that has a big dip, then you cannot rely on this flat surface, okay? So this is why you need that accurate topographics so that you can able to get that information. The one thing that some people missed out in Revit is that in shadow study, like if you're in Alberta, sometimes this is where you change your daylight saving, okay? Always turn them on for Vancouver's sake so that you get the accurate map, like a shadow study. If you don't turn this on, sometimes it obscured by 1 hour, so sometimes it may look really funny. So what I do is that always rely on this. Okay. Now, how do we determine where the shadow study? It's based on your position, your true north. Okay. Right now, what I have is that this is my true north. Okay. If you have true north set up, you're fine. Okay. If you don't have true north set up, it's better to get the actual where the true north, where the surveyor true north is supposed to be. Then once you have that set up, then you're able to depict where the shadow is going to be. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a shadow. Okay. But right now the shadow is not there because you don't have a topo. So once I turn on the topo, okay, maybe I should go to site. Okay. And just say, there we go. Now, the reason why this wasn't correct, let's say shadow, lighting, you kind of have to make sure that if it's in a still day, this is in Vancouver, okay, use that location, say okay, continue, okay. I typically, if you're doing shadow study, always make 1 year ahead. Okay, so let's say the building's going to be built in, let's say 2020 or something. I always put it like, November 2018. Let's say 2020. Let's say that's the building, because that's where sometimes, when you do it now, you may not get the actual picture. So what I like to do is I like to put in like, okay, that's the date. Turn this off and then say okay. There we go. So that's how your shadow reacts with your thing. You will see this little glitches in there. That's fine, because what happens is sometimes the topo map has this dip and valley. So that this is okay. But the one thing that you want to do is that you want to get as much information as possible so that you can actually study how this shadow reacts with the surrounding neighborhood. Any questions so far? I'm just doing it really fast, like half an hour kind of a demonstration. It's like how you get this information. Okay, how do you get this information? First, you locate where you want it. Open up this. Okay, just say open it. Paste in the where the location you want to be. Copy that region, and then paste it in here. And then what you do is that you save that drawing as, open data, right? COV open data. And then once you have that open data, you create another one. It's called the Revit, where you move that 0, 0 closer to where the Revit 0, 0 is supposed to be. Okay. Once you've done that, that's all you have to do. You can move orientation. That's fine. But within this 0, 0, the next thing you want to do is that you want to use this data. You want to use this point extraction manager. Okay, go file, make sure it's points. Okay, you can use like a Polyline and stuff like that, but I like to use point. Okay, and then output, you want to file, click on browse, and make sure there's a CSV file. Okay, and then save it. Okay, once you have it in there, go back into Revit, and then what you do is that you go insert. You can go CAD link, but most of the time what I would do is that I'd advise people, if you want to put in CAD only things, you create another Revit file and then just link in all the CAD stuff in there, and then you link that Revit file into this. Okay, just as a simplicity. And then what you do is that you go to massing, you go to topo surface. Okay, and what you're going to do is that you go import that. Now, the nice thing about the topo is that you can delete this topo and then reinsert them in again. Let's say if you want a bigger area, you can do that as well. So there's no limit to how you do it. It's just that, you just have to find the file, and it just takes time to do this. Once you have this thing done, establish where your property boundary right there, and then you start doing your massing. Okay, just do simple massing, and just do an in-place massing. And then what you do next is that you create a section. You do an array of your building. Okay, once you have that array of building, then you select the massing. Select that massing, and then you go basically say, click on this edit and select what floor you want to put in and hit OK. What it does is that slice it, and then what you're going to do is that you're going to go into the massing, click on floor. Okay, once you click on floor and select that massing, what it does is that anything that is cut through that floor, it's going to generate that automatically. Okay, the same thing with the curtain wall system. So what you do is that you select the curtain wall, place it in there, and then the curtain walls, it's pretty much set up. Next thing you want to do is that finally, if you want to get like a schedule out of this, go to view, click on schedule. Okay, and what you do is that you go into the massing, and you can say massing floor. Once you have that, then you have this sort of a data mass floor schedule. And what I did in here is that I'm basically picking floor area, and I create this as a calculated value because sometimes you want to show both units. Okay, you create calculated value, make sure this is an area, and then you just say reference to that floor area, and then just call this floor area metric. Go sort. You can sort by level. Okay, I typically sort by level, and then by blah blah blah. And then next thing you want to do is that you go to formatting, make sure it's calculate total. Same thing with this one. You go back to sort and grouping, go back to and say, I want the grand total of this and total only. Okay. And when you hit OK, then what happens is that it would generate like this list. Now, if you want to know how much it costs, again, you can always put in a cost value associated with this. So I'm just going to go add and you can say if there's a cost. Currency. Okay. Cost. Okay. Let's do a cost analysis. Okay. So right now what I'm going to do is that you can do calculated. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. I don't need that. You can always use calculated value. Okay. So what you're going to do is that you're going to take the number times it by whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that. This is going to be cost to build your building. And what you could do is that you could say this one multiply by, let's say right now is $800 per square foot. I'm assuming. Oh, inconsistent unit. Yeah, I always get that. Okay, let's assume that it's a number, and I want it to be a number, or you can say a currency. Inconsistent unit. Inconsistent unit. Okay. Let's assume that's correct. Okay. Yeah, sometimes, okay, how much is it going to cost overall? You know, I'm just putting in as a number, but later on we'll figure out how to do the cost to build your building. And it's going to be, how much is that? 42 million? Or 420 million. Field format, none. And let's say use digital grouping. Oh yeah, $424 million to build your building downtown. So okay, so if you want, you can always say, okay, go edit back and say, okay, this is not $800 per square foot. It's going to be like 500. Let's say, oops. So let's say this is going to be $500 square foot to build a building. So okay, that building is about $262 million. Okay, each floor is going to be this much, and then you can charge whatever. So it's kind of like a good tools to analysis, right? So if you want to know, like, okay, rough estimate how much this is going to cost, and then using like average value, how much it's going to construct it, then that's just how you say this is how much it's going to cost the client to build the building. And it's a good kind of an exercise, and then you can just say keep on, you know, push and pull your building and stuff like that, and then you know you can just generate this information very quickly. Okay, if it take me half an hour to do it, I'm pretty sure you guys can do it within a day, and then get your information in as soon as you can. Any question? Hopefully, I get you guys inspired by using this, because this is a pretty simple tool to use. I don't know why users still, you know, resist of, you know, following this kind of a thing, because this is pretty quick. You're not trying to impress with your pretty picture, but you're trying to do analysis first and get that information for the client. And then next thing you want to do is that if you want to do more of a very detailed design, that's the next step. First, you want to pick your building, get your mass, kind of like, you know, understand how much floor you can get. And you can just tie this with so many things. So if you want to know, like, what's your FSR and all that stuff, there's a lot of other calculation you have to do just to say that, yes, we're over limit, or no, we're under the limit. And then you can say how many floors you can build. Okay, there's a lot of things. Like it's a very powerful tool. I wish that more people would start this way, because this allows you to do many things. Okay, it's just not Revit, but there's so many. We have a lot of other analysis tool. Okay, so if let's say you're doing a massing, I'm just basically going to say, you know what, there's tools for that. For which one is it? There's a tool to do your the energy study There's other like glass ratio, like how much glass you needed for your building and stuff like that. So a lot of the BIM tools are there for the user. Just that, you know, if you have a requirement for certain things, it's good to do it within Revit because it provides you a lot of those tools that you can analyze, and you're not losing that data. Okay. With other things, you're basically creating data from this software and then creating data for that software and creating another data from another software. And you have to tie all of them together. And it's very manually intensive. And this is where we're losing a lot of time because, you know, you're using many software to do each specific task, but they're not tied together. So within Revit, you can just say, have all that thing, tie one, and then you know what? That's the way to go. All right. So if there's no question, yeah, just let me know. If you have any concerns or anything, just, yeah, I'm open till this week. My last day is on Friday. So, yep. Hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye.